or controlled by the powers that be, then there will be no justice. The voice of the voiceless cannot be heard. The oppressed cannot voice out his voice because there is no freedom of the media. So media also have to describe a nation. Is that a dictatorship? Or is this country actually playing on fundamental human rights? Then you talk about church, which is the religion. Let's say religion. It's not every country that worships God. A lot of countries have other religions. I was privileged to find myself out of the shores of the country in several occasions. But one of the ones that took me aback was when I went to South Korea. As I arrived in South Korea, we've been told it's a Christian nation because you have the biggest single church as at then in South Korea by David Yong-Gi-Shu. So I was expecting a very wonderful Christian nation, only to get it discovered that Christianity is just about 15%. It makes up 15% of the religion of the people. So the major religion of these people has nothing to do with Christianity. I think they're into Hindu religion. And one of the places they took us to for tourism was a Hindu temple. I refused to enter. We kept hearing some kind of music that has to do with the culture of Hindu and all of that. Some of my colleagues went to go and see. They said that that temple was 1,000 and something years old of Hindu religion. So we discovered that there are billions of people who don't even know whether there's something called church. So we're actually looking at religion. So when you move into any country, the type of religion of that country also helps to describe that country. Thank you, I cannot go longer than this. And then you have what you call the arts and entertainment. So arts and entertainment of any nation helps to describe the country. If I come to any nation, I look at the television, I can tell you the kind of country I have come to. If it is highly influenced by marine spirits, I will see naked women entertaining. You know, the moment they come up 5 seconds on that screen, they have defined millions of TV tuners and viewers. And then in other situations, you can see that they are not, their music actually reflects decency. So art and entertainment, even the paintings and sculpting, help to describe a nation. Then you talk about the education system. That's another thing that describes a nation. And lastly, the governmental system of describe a nation. So what God has said is that in these last days, He's going to take over the 7 mountains of nationhood. And that has to do with raising men who will control each of these mountains I have mentioned. And by the grace of God, I have special interest and mandate on the mountain of the economy, a mountain of education, a mountain of arts and entertainment. Those of you who know me for a long time know me with worship and clouds. And some keep asking me, have you stopped worship and clouds? I smile. I say, no, I have not stopped worship and clouds. I'm only re-strategizing because I cannot sacrifice the dimensions of God in my life at the altar of focusing on one track. The worship and clouds is looking at my entertainment calling. I also have calling in the economy. I also have a calling in education. And what we are here today to see is a section or a reflection of my calling on the economy. And this is a very strong calling because God passed me through a lot of training before I became qualified. I am not here to handle this conference because I'm a lawyer. I'm not here to handle the conference because I'm a pastor. I'm not here to handle the conference for any other reason. But I'm here to handle the conference because I'm called into it, number 1. And 2, I'm handling the conference because God passed me through the tutelage. He had to make me to pass through the crucibles. He made me to pass through all I needed, the rigors, to start life with from bare floor without any support, and became what I am today. When you were hearing my profile, some of you would say, this man is great. I'm just a small man that God made great. I knew where I came from the floor. I have a very humble background. through determination, some of the things you'll be hearing in this conference, I got myself into where I am today. As I speak to you, I am the chairman of a multinational company which came from one of the international trade missions I took with young people like you overseas. And that project is between me and South Koreans, and it's valued at 1.2 billion naira. As we speak now, Edo State government is coming in to stakehold in that project. So I'm not telling you what I read from motivational speakers. I'm not telling you things I read from books. Because it is easy for people to go across the road and pick one book by Brian Tracy, or by, what do they call it, Napoleon Hill, or others like Dale Carnegie, and then begin to excite you, talking so much about motivation. Then after that motivation, what next? That's the question. So we have been fooled enough over the years of being excited with motivational speaking. They tell you can pass through the wall, fine talk. They tell you can hit the roof, fine talk. They tell you should believe in yourself. There is a you in you that can come up, fine talk. But at the end of the day, what next? Discover that you have actually been blown apart and left with nothing. But what we are talking about is quite different. We are now going to let you know that it is possible for you to graduate from the university and do not need any paid job, but become a job creator.
I believe that.
I believe that.
I believe that.
If I could create a job by owning a multinational company, if I could create a job by also owning a consulting firm which consults far and wide off the shores of this country, then you can also create a job. And ask me, how did I create it? Did I come with money? Do I have anything to start with? Nothing. But I have knowledge. Information is what people need more than they need money. And so the information I have is what stood me out today. The information I have has made me to stand before kings. The information I have makes me to be shopped for. The information I have makes me sit with those who are on top. And that same information is what is tying me now to the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I was told recently, please be careful, government might like to hijack your ideas. I said government cannot hijack my ideas. They can only take the periphery. It takes a man with a dream to interpret the dream. When Joseph was in Egypt, after explaining the dream to Pharaoh, could Pharaoh do it? Pharaoh could not. You are so quiet when I talk scriptures like you are not Christian. When Moses brought the mandate of Egypt to Pharaoh, I asked a question. Did Pharaoh hijack that idea to say we don't need Joseph?
No.
It's not possible. He is not the one with the blueprint. Are you getting it? So I do not need to be afraid of government hijack because they do not have what it takes to interpret a vision they did not initiate. And so we are here today because your life will never remain the same.
Amen. Amen.
Well, I will be talking a few things. I'm happy the slides are back because I wasn't happy when I saw that the light went off. The slides are back. We are looking at unemployment as a global problem that must be addressed. Please let the slides begin to work. Slides. Who are the slide presenters? Okay. I'm looking at unemployment as a global problem. So in today's fast and computer age, our world has never had it so threatened to the spine with the challenge of unemployment and poverty as it is currently the case. Do you believe that? Okay. Unemployment is today a global phenomenon which has dealt serious blows on the economies of both developed and developing nations. So statistically, data has this report that according to the World Bank reports, Nigeria topped India in the poverty index. And let me tell you, this report was at 2014. When we talk of unemployment, formally we restrict it to Africa. We say, okay, African countries, they're suffering from unemployment. But I put it to you today that some African countries are better than European countries as we speak. Economies of countries like Greece melted like wax. Spain melted like wax. Most of the countries in the Western or Eastern European countries that used to be the hub of the world. And then you go to the Eastern Europeans, their cases are worse off than Africa because they just came out from the former amalgamation of the USSR. You understand the story too well. They were finally fragmented into 14 countries, banana republics. Apart from Russia, that is solid. The rest are banana republics. They are still looking for AIDS like African countries are looking for AIDS. Most of our people who left this country for Europe finally discovered that even small menial jobs they were doing, like going to farms to pick apple, they lost all. Whites came back to do the jobs. Those jobs they called dirty because there were downsizing, job downsizing, sacks, closure of factories and whatever you can call it. So there is nothing like African countries are poor and then Europeans are doing better. So let us migrate to go and look for greener pastures. There is no greener pasture for any man who believes that his life will hinge on the premise of using certificate to look for paid job. I don't know the kind of degrees you have that can stand what you have in the developed world. They went to Oxford, they went to Cambridge, and you schooled in African universities that are half-baked, that they don't even recognize their degrees. My wife is an immigration consultant. Most of African professionals who want to go and work in Canada, when they come, there is a regulatory body in Canada that requests for these degrees so that they can do what they call ski matching. And I put it to that most of Nigerian degrees, when it gets to Canada, those platforms that ski match, then reject them because they do not recognize the universities here. Now, how would you now get up and say you are going to those countries you want to go and work? What work are you looking for? With the level of retrenchment going on global economic meltdown, which we are all aware of. So this brings us to the knowledge that there is nothing like unemployment is an African affair. Unemployment is no more African, it's global. And then, according to the World Bank reports, Nigeria actually topped India on the poverty index as far back as 2014 rather. But as we speak now, Nigeria is now the poverty destination of the world. So Nigeria is rated the most poor of all nations. You will get that statistics better tomorrow. So in 2018, the number of Nigerians in extreme poverty, increases by 6 people per minute. That's the statistic they gave. It's every 6 minutes, every 1 minute, 6 Nigerians drop into poverty. While the same India were better than every 1 minute, 44 Indians cross into prosperity. That is the reversal, so you can understand what I'm talking about. Now, 69% of Nigeria's population live below the poverty index, according to African Development Bank. 7% of the world's poor, as of 2014, lived in Nigeria, but now 12% of the world's poor are now in Nigeria. 66% of the rural population of Nigerians live below $1 per day. And then 41% of Nigerian children are stunted. 9% are wasted or thin, and 23% are underweight. This is accurate statistics from United Nations. You understand what I mean. So we can't forget in a hurry that unemployment hit this country so hard. In Africa, there is an average of 40% of unemployed people in some countries. But in Nigeria, it was hitting 30%. You are aware, without being told so much about what happened in 2014 when, Nigerian immigration advertised for just vacancy position for 4,000 jobs. An application was not only received by millions of Nigerians, all the stadia in Nigeria were crowded at various destinations where those interviews were to be conducted. The rest is history. You remember that 20 people were marched down in the stampede of seeking for job, just 4,000 spaces. Then, similarly, you cannot forget that also, I think 2 years ago here, Nigerian police decided to add just 10,000 cops to their list. And they advertised. Applications hit their website and crashed it. There are 1 million applications searched in where they were looking for 10,000 people until the website crashed. In 2014, 6.5 million, that is what the number that applied. People stormed recruitment centers for only 4,000 jobs. You know that one. I have already said that. So in the same 2018, there were also pockets of injuries and deaths at the in the police recruitment centers. That one is already known to you. So we can now say on the basis of this that efforts to be running around in search of greener pastures from government paid jobs where we wear ties and go and knock at the doors and then sit as receptionists and all of that, the days are actually over. And these things are actually celebrated in countries like Nigeria. Do you know why it is celebrated in Nigeria to wear tie and be going to one place of work expecting envelopes, and then at the end of your tenure on that place of work, you are retired when all the vitality in you at the age of 65, 70 are completely extracted? You have burned the candle of your youth. Then you are released into the world of the unknown as a retiree, retired and tired. Then you get back, you'll be calculating to wait for pension and gratuity. That gratuity you may wait till you die. Or if it comes at all, you have no idea of what to do with the money. Because the worst thing that happens to people is civil service. Civil service destroys you. Civil service do complete emasculation of human capacity. Civil service makes you hang, you live a fake life. You live like a baby who depends on the mother and father. You can see the campaign now for increase of minimum wage. Is it not true? As of today, the governor said we can't pay. Let's stop fooling ourselves. The 18,000 we can't pay. And federal government say, let's give you 24. Let states pay 20. States say we can't pay 20. We can't even for 18 is a problem for us. That is the type of life you want to live. You want to hang your destiny on that kind of life. The only option left for you is to get there and start stealing like those who are there already. But if you want to live your life and plan your future and talk about raising a healthy family and then think about owning infrastructure, structures like houses and ride car and all of that, I put it to you that you may wait for eternity. So it takes a lazy man to be watching out for such jobs. Now the question comes, with all of these on ground, where does this staggering statistics on Nigeria as Africa's biggest economy leave the rest African countries? If Nigeria is rated as the biggest economy in Africa, and we have all of these reports that are not favorable, where does it leave, if I may ask you, other people from Africa whose economies are more terrible? If you have not left the shores of Nigeria, when you move out of Nigeria to some African countries like in the northern part of Africa and some of the African central part of Africa, let me put it to you, you will be eternally grateful for being a Nigerian. I will show you why you have to be happy for being a Nigerian. Now, unemployment is a menace that must be resisted with zero tolerance. If not contained, it will create fertile ground for what? Criminality. Do you agree? When there is no job, what do you expect? Criminality. So entrepreneurship from Asian tigers should teach us some lessons. I have gone to Asia. I have entered a few countries in Asia. And what I saw remains a miracle. This one is beyond. In fact, those days we used to think that miracles are only when the cripple walks. Am I talking? When blind eyes open. You don't know that bridge across a river is a miracle. You don't know that. You don't know that space exploration is a miracle.
Right, it's a miracle.
A man put himself inside a spaceship and broke through the hemispheres and landed in another planet. It's a miracle. You don't know that one? That for somebody to stay in one single control room to be monitoring the entire activities of the world from computers, and he launches some kind of devices, robots to Mars, And it took him years, maybe 2-3 years for this robot to finally land in Mars. And he's controlling that particular robot from here on Earth on a laptop. And he's there viewing and he's assigning instruction to the robot to take soil sample, analyze, and as all of those activities are going on Mars, these people are in the control room, monitoring, analyzing, working with the robot. At the end of the day, robot runs up its assignment, enters the same spaceship, and comes back. You don't know it's a miracle. Miracle is not only when blind eyes open. Because those inspirations and knowledge were given by God. If you go to the Bible calls them men wise of heart. When it was time for Moses to come down from the mountain to build the ark of God and the tabernacle, God told him, don't panic on how these things will be done. For right in the crowd, I have Aholiab, I have Bezalel, and other men wise of heart. They will interpret it. Are you getting it? Do you know that you carry a lot of things that will become miracle in this world today? Do you know that some of you have answers for all the questions of this world?
Amen.
As you sit here now. But your mind does not go into all of that. Because you have structured yourself into what we call the status quo. The status quo is, I am born, then I go through school. When I graduate, I look for a job. And when I look for the job, I start working. And then I'll be earning salaries. And when I start earning salaries, I'll marry. When I'm married, I'll be raising babies. When I raise babies, I'll try and build house. When I build house. So you have captured your heart with precision. Just like mathematics. 2 + 2 = 4. So there is no room for discovery, invasion, finding out the contents you carry. That content people carry is what brought the spaceship that went to the Mars. That content people carry is what brought the architecture that stood up this building. I waited here 30 years ago. This was where I did my wedding and reception. And every time I come here, I need to imagine.
Hello, everybody. We are here at this Economic Empowerment Conference because we know that poverty is one of the main drivers of hunger. And we with Feed the Nation, we intend to be a solution to this problem. It's a systemic problem, it's a cyclical problem. We understand that, so we are partnering with organizations here in Benin to solve the problem. We know that the Word of God says it's more blessed to give than to receive. So we are here lending a helping hand, and we are rubbing our heads together to see how we can go about solving this problem and moving forward, despite what some of you out there are saying. We will make a difference here in this Benin.
We already started making a difference as part of our commitment in ending extreme poverty all over the world, in desolate places like in Africa here. So as part of our commitment in partnering with organizations to end extreme poverty, so we are here to sensitize the people via this conference of youth empowerment. So it's part of ending unemployment and seek ways we can partner and bring dry foods to people that really need this stuff. And I'm here with my boss. Thank you. It's a great privilege.
The focus tomorrow will be youth, and there can be no building of a nation unless we empower the youth. So tomorrow, look for us again, and we will go back inside.
They hate themselves, not who hate them. And they want to go to carry out your looking. So passion is a personifier. Your life was
I'm here with Auntie Vicky, and I'm here with Auntie Vicky, and let's see what Auntie Vicky has to say.
Good morning, everybody. This is the 2018 Entrepreneurship Conference, and it's going well. First speaker, president, is ongoing and giving a lecture. And hopefully the youth here and everybody will be sensitized, and before they leave, something will be added to them in knowledge on how to grow their business, how to manage their business, and how to make money and make it well.
Japan vowed to look inwards to be able to generate sustainability. The first thing they did was to outlaw international migration for their young people, because the highest asset in the world is the human talent. A country like, what do you call this country again, very close to Malaysia, that small country that is in the first world today. Who can remind me? Close to Malaysia there. You are not current. Singapore. Who said Singapore there? Please, can I say that? Thank you very much. Singapore does not have a trace of crude oil on their soil, but they have the highest amount of human capacity in petroleum engineering. They actually prospect for oil and gas more than any country in the world. And their human capital is all over the world where there is crude oil, where there is oil and gas. Am I talking to you? And you know that the people who have this capacity will turn that thing you have to become money. If you have gold, but you don't have the technology to mine gold, will gold be valuable? Gold will not be valuable. So the man who has the technology will now tell you, I can do something about it. You'll be begging him, please come and turn it to money. Let us share the money. Is it not true? So they don't have the crude, but they have the technocracy. Am I talking? They raise technocrats across the world where there is oil and gas, and they control the resources of the oil and gas more than those who have the deposit. So human capital remains the greatest capital. Human resource remains the greatest resource. Are we here together? So understand it that you are actually too big to fail. When Japan realized the seriousness of keeping their human capital behind, they control their youths not to leave their shores. And they gave themselves 20 years roadmap to stop depending on any country and also to colonize the world in technology. It didn't get up to 20 years, Japan took over the world. Another fine example from Asia is that China, with its population that is supposed to be the poorest country in the world, because China has about 2.something billion people. The whole population of Africa put together is not up to China population. Am I talking? Now, such a country is supposed to have the poorest people in the world. True or false? But it is not so. The reverse is the case. What is the secret? After so many years of propounding communism, which makes everybody to become a servant of state, you do not have right to own property. That was their political philosophy and economic philosophy. After all of those years of doing all of that and it was not working, after about the early 70s, they started thinking of economic reform, where they embraced capitalism and welfareism together and started allowing people to own businesses. So China, through that move, injected about 50 million small and micro enterprises in the country. That was between 1980 and 2012. From 1980 to 2012, China employed 500 million of our citizens from 50 million small and micro enterprises. 500 million jobs. If you go to India, the same story. Go to Japan, the same story. Go to Korea, the same story. Go to all countries, even Dubai, right now, in spite of Islamic culture, they have also come on board. So it is not that one is talking and trying to make people or make himself sound presentable, but these are practical issues that cannot be taken for granted. So I have already said here that Chinese economic miracle launched 50 million SMEs, which created 500 million jobs between 1980 and 2012. So lessons to learn from Chinese economic miracle. One, they promoted self-reliance. Say self-reliance.
Self-reliance.
Say self-reliance.
Self-reliance.
China promoted it. China promoted self-reliance. Two, use government policy to boost economic competitiveness. That's another thing China did. Chinese government policies. Let me tell you, government does not raise businesses. Government cannot set up companies. Any company set up by government will become a white elephant project.
and it has become outlawed worldwide. It's no more popular anywhere in the world for government to be involved in doing businesses. All corporations in America, in England, and different advanced nations of the world that were initially controlled by government have been privatized. Do you know the reason? They are white elephant projects. They are just there to compensate politicians and help children of the ruling class to get jobs. And these people do not have the wherewithal. They don't have capacity. They go in because they are favored. And so such projects cannot generate profit. Have you ever seen any company that is raised up by government that has ability to pay salaries? They will still depend on taxpayers' money to pay salaries. There you see an individual will start a business with 50,000 naira, maybe by the roadside, and is growing that fund, is taking care of his family from that fund. Gradually the business is getting up. Gradually he employs few hands. Am I talking? He can sustain them, sustain the business, sustain his family from that. But government will put 200 billion naira into a project and still depend on your tax and my tax to go and pay staff that work there. Because of corruption, because of ineptitude, because of, lack of qualification. The people were not employed on the basis of merit. But rather, politicians will be compensated with those places. Where is your Bende breweries? Where is your Ewu flour mill? Where is your, which other cement factory? What do you call that one again? Up north. Okwila cement. Several things government put together. Are they not dead today? They will die because it is not about profit making. It's about compensation. It's about giving jobs to children of the ruling class. It's about settling a politician so that he can have somewhere to get his own court for supporting the party. So it's not about business. And so public corporations are no more in vogue. Government does not have business with setting up businesses. They have business with setting up infrastructure. What did I say? Infrastructure. Government should give you good roads, give you stable electricity, give you health, provide health services, give you everything that they owe you as a citizen. So that if you set up a business, you have electricity. Am I talking? Somebody who is by the roadside who is doing vulcanizing will not be thinking of buying a generator to run his vulcanizing job. There is confidence that electricity is 24 hours. Look at the way we have been suffering with epileptic power supply in this conference. Am I talking? After a while, the thing goes off. If somebody has to be in a surgical room as a patient, and then some doctors are there trying to do one or two things, and this light power outage happens, you know the person's life is 50-50 in that situation. So other kinds of businesses have suffered a lot of setback because of what? Power outages. A lot of companies that will enter Nigeria are not ready to come in. I go abroad and they'll be telling me, that's your country without electricity. You see some Nigerians telling you, I'm not a Nigerian. My children are not coming to that country. I'm not ready to buy generator. One of those who said that to me severally finally died 2 years ago. And I asked the wife, with this type of seed your husband was sowing in the head of your children, where do you stand with these children right now in this light? And the woman said, it's the man, no, not me. I said, God, now you can't bring these children to this country. He has sown negative seeds. That there's no power, there's no security. He signed it like music all the days of his life. So, what government owes us are infrastructure, enabling environment, so that we can put business together. So it is not their duty to set up companies, but we shall set up companies. So China has taught us that one, we have to promote self-reliance. We use government policy to boost economic competitiveness, and then we will factor in small or micro businesses, like farmers and rural areas, trying to touch them at their own level. So China is now a world-class startup and venture capital industry. That is clear. Do you know that China is now the factory of the whole world? Talk to me back. Yes. Are you aware that China is the factory of the world? up to America, Europe, everywhere. It is Chinese products. You see the economic battle now between Trump and the president of China. They are at each other's neck, not with arms, what you call arms struggle, but this time economic war. You know that economic war is stronger than arms struggle. You don't know that. Economic war is Cold War. Am I talking to you? That is why the Bible says that in the last days, God wants to leave the economy of nations to the church. If you go to Isaiah chapter 60, it's clear. The reason is that the end time war has no business with firing gunshots. When Soviet Union was a threat to world peace, am I talking to you? They were the biggest threat to world peace because they had everything like the United States. America began to think of how to stop them. Remember that after the Second World War, the United Nations had outlawed any form of war that will involve the world again. America and Soviet Union went into Cold War. Cold War means ideological war. Am I talking to you? And Africa was their territory and part of South America. What is Cold War? America comes to sell capitalism. Russia sold communism. Am I speaking? It went to places like Democratic Republic of Congo. Then America chose the like of Mobutu Sese Seko to represent capitalist intention. Then the Soviets picked Patrice Lumumba to sell communist ideology. Am I talking? And when the drive became too much, America sponsored the assassination of Patrice Lumumba, who was pro-Soviet. The same thing in Angola. America went for Savimbi to fight against Santos, who was representing the Russian interest. Are we here together? The Cold War lasted for 27 years, and thousands and millions of people were killed. Eventually, the same America sponsored the elimination of Savimbi. Savimbi was a medical doctor who finally went into guerrilla warfare. They used him and they killed him at the end of the day. Like they also sponsored the killing in the Democratic Republic of Congo of Mobutu, of Kabila. They used Kabila to oust Mobutu, and they also killed Kabila when Kabila refused to dance to their tune. That's what you call Cold War. What did I call that? So Cold War has been there between these two power players. At a point, America wanted to remain the mono power and authority in the world. What did they do to achieve this? One day opportunity came. That opportunity was a hunger struck in Soviet Union. Poverty everywhere. Soviet Union started asking for food aid. Are you getting me? America, as a very strong voice in the Security Council, said no food aid for Russia until Russia agrees to dismember. This is their big land. In the name of one country, we are tired of it. Let's destroy the thing so that all this power issue will end with Soviet. Soviet refused. So okay, stay there. But when hunger showed them 3+1, they came back and accepted the condition. And that's how they dismembered to 14 countries. Did they fire a shot? No, it was an economic weapon. What did I call it? Economic weapon. So right now it is actually those who control the economy that rule the world. It's not about gun. Why it is not easy to overpower the Arabians is because they have economic power. Don't forget that they are too rich. The richest countries are from there, not the wealthiest countries. Wealth and riches are not the same. So the richest countries of the world are from there. All the crude oil in the world, the headquarters are from the Asian world. Am I talking? So what are we talking about? Not Asian, that's the Arabian world. So the catch is there. So it is difficult to dismember them through Cold War. But once there is poverty, you are going down. So the world is controlled by economic powers. And that's why we should understand that it is the duty of state to grow the economy of this country by doing what? Equipping the incoming generation with entrepreneurial skill, like it was done by China, like it was done by Japan, and several others. Now, Nigeria, on her part, is greater than Japan. Somebody will say, why am I saying this kind of nonsense? I want to show you now that Nigeria is greater than Japan. and greater than China in the issue of entrepreneurship. If you have not heard anything, hear this one now. And I'm going to follow up. I hope the slides are running. Okay. Better than Japan, Nigeria stands with a high among the African nations in taking over global economy from the Asian tigers. How? Via entrepreneurship, because of her rich, purposeful, and dynamic human resources. Some of you do not know that this country is great. You will not know the greatness of Nigeria in terms of human resources until you see a Nigerian stand amidst other nationals from other parts of the world. Let me put it to you, in every country in the world, Nigerians are respected and dreaded. Even the uneducated, something is in their heads. If you lock this place up and put Nigeria, they will show you 1,000 ways of escaping from here. That is not common with other people. And that is why all over the world we are objects of malicious attack because of envy. Most of those attacks and press campaign against Nigerians are actually caused by envy. It is not, we are not as black as we are painted. Because our people are smart, our people are intelligent. You have heard the report from the United States that Nigeria now is the most literate immigrant community in that country. You hardly see a Nigerian, even with bare hands, move into a country and does not want to add value. He begins to think of how to migrate from the initial state to something higher. He wants to go to school. He's doing some odd jobs. He's paying through school. He wants to improve because he knows that opportunities only come to those who are prepared for opportunities. Because when you actually build capacity, somehow along the line, something will come that you will fit in. But if you retain the same position every day, you are not adding values, you are not changing status, definitely you cannot think of adding values. And when the opportunity comes, you are not fit for it. But that's one thing Nigerians don't do. Nigerians are workaholic. Everywhere in the world, they come in with bare hands, shortly afterward they take over. And then the envy starts. You see what they are doing to Nigerians in Ghana right now? They are locking up their shops and saying they want to relate with Nigerians the way they relate with foreigners. But you are in ECOWAS, for crying out loud. Ghanaians are here doing business. Nobody harasses them. But they feel that these Nigerians just came and took over. So the Ghanaians, the citizens are the one now fighting, using government authorities to lock up about 400 Nigerian companies. And then, as they keep talking, they say, no, Nigerians must export, do capital in flight of $1 million per person to be able to invest in Ghana. This Ghana here at this corner. It's not done. But all these are done out of envy because Nigerians are creative and hardworking people. Are you getting it? So Nigeria is far better than Japan for the following reasons. You can see. There is a research conducted by Global Entrepreneurs Initiative, or what is it called? Monitoring report, rather. This particular group, let me call their name properly. There's a survey conducted by Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, GEM, headed by Professor Mike Harrington of the University of Cape Town in South Africa. He conducted a research on entrepreneurship. Globally, let me give you the statistics of what he got. He said Nigeria tops global ranking on business enthusiasm for SMEs out of 99 countries, stating the fact that 90% of Nigerian adults believe they have the ability to become entrepreneurs. 35 out of 100 are already involved in some sort of entrepreneurial activities. Nigerians have the heart for entrepreneurship. He said they conducted a research in 99 countries, and Nigeria ranked topmost with enthusiasm for entrepreneurship. It is not every other country that has the kind of enthusiasm we have. Particularly the Francophone countries, they are tied to salaries, work, very lousy and lazy people. It's like by colonial ideology, France actually did that to emasculate them. Very lazy people. So the conduct shows that Nigerians have high confidence in themselves for entrepreneurship. And that is the biggest asset you need to become an entrepreneur. Then he says again, Nigeria is an entrepreneurial nation where most adults are confident in their own entrepreneurial capacities and see huge opportunities in setting up their own businesses. 3, Nigerians do not nurse the fear of failure, as only 21% of them were concerned that their business ideas might fail. Only 21%. So they don't care about failure. And let me tell you, that is the most valuable asset for anybody to actually strive towards entrepreneurship. That sense of forthrightness and faith and confidence. Fact focus on Africa. World Bank statistics report on the African economy from African Development Bank highlights that 4 of the 53 African countries, South Africa, Algeria, Nigeria, and Egypt, known as SANE, S-A-N-E, which is an acronym for the 4 countries, SANE nation, contribute 54% of the continent's GDP, which is gross domestic product. So in the entire country of 54, continent of 54 countries, only 4 countries in Africa produce 54% of the GDP of Africa. And Nigeria is number 1 in that ranking. So SANE compares well against BRIC. BRIC nations are called Brazil, Russia, India, and China. For those of you who will be taking trade missions with us to South Africa or to Shanghai or to Seoul or to Dubai, you will meet with the SANE, with BRICS. BRICS are called Brazil, B for Brazil, R for Russia, I for India, C for China, and S for South Africa. It's only South Africa that belongs to the BRIC. BRICS are emerging economies of the world, the current emerging economies that are having so much stamina to control the world. China and South Africa is there. And we take trade missions with BRICS in this organization. We move young entrepreneurs down to BRICS conferences and do what we call business matchmaking between investors out there and Africans, particularly the young people. Now, the comparison stated that SANE compares well against BRIC. How? Average per capita income for 2005 to 2006, SANE was $1,841 per capita. That is per person in those countries mentioned, the 4 countries. Each person per capita is $1,841. But the BRICS, we call the emerging economies, they were $1,669 per capita. So you can say that BRICS outweighs them. Am I talking? You are not getting it. Now, SANE combined constitutes 26% of India's population. All the 4 countries in Africa are called SANE nations. It's just 26% of population of India. Now look at the irony. Yet SANE contributes 70% of India's GDP. 26%, a country with 26% of the population of India raises 70% of the GDP of India. So that shows you that this place is an investor's destination. That's just what the statistics is all about. To show you that your country is not as black as it is painted. That is why in the face of Boko Haram or the crisis, investors are still using umbrella to dodge the bullets and come inside to put their businesses. They are not ready to go. If you read papers every day, you see investors are coming, They are coming because this is the investment destination. If you do not understand the investment opportunities in this country, then you will have reason to be looking for how to migrate to ordinary Burkina Faso. Desert, stricken Burkina Faso. Some of you will be running there. I'm looking for investment. I'm looking for job. Now, SANE actually is a more attractive and productive investment destination. So among the SANE nations, which Nigeria ranks #1 in the entire Africa. Can you put your hands together? Nigeria is #1 in the entire Africa as it stands today. So what does this suggest to you as a Nigerian? What it suggests is that you can never have any reason to write off yourself. You don't have reason to be running helter-skelter in search of greener pastures. This is where the greener pasture is. And this is the destination of the whole world. They are coming. This is the investment destination in sub-Saharan Africa. So it gives us all the openings and all the ingenuity we need to come in to start talking on how to now put our hands on something. and then change our world. So 20 of the 48 sub-Sahara countries operated on an average growth rate of between 5 and 6% in 1995. In 2013, Africa's GDP growth was 3.5, 2014, 3.9, 2015, 4.5, and 2016, 5%. Am I right? 5% and above expected. So you can see that African GDP is actually on the increase, despite all the blackmails, despite all the insurgency, despite all the troubles. Am I talking? The GDP is going up. When European GDP is crash landing, your own is going up. But because you do not know and how to harness that opportunity, you begin to change your mind and think of things that are not relevant. Well, the rest are graphs, the graphs on the economy. I think that may not be too relevant now. Now, projected results on African global trade, okay, that is okay. But let me just say that if small and micro enterprises are developed in Africa among the youths, it will assuredly add at least 1% growth to global trade with Africa within the years of operation, which will result in $70 billion additional revenue for the continent, 3 times the current aid it receives from the G8 countries. So this place is telling you that if all of us now decide to follow the path of entrepreneurship, go into small and micro enterprises, that after a short while, Africa will be raising $70 billion US. Yeah, that's just 1% growth of Africa's GDP. We give Africa $70 billion US. And this money is more than the aid Africa receives from the G8 nations. You know that Africa receives aids. And those aids are really no aids. These people are our colonial masters. They say they gave us independence, but we actually do not have independence. We have political independence, which is about 60% political independence, but economic independence is about 10%. They still decide for us, our economy. They give us who rules us. They kill those who have the brain to take this country to the next level and liberate us from imperialism. So they sit in America, they sit in England, in Rutham House, to say who rules any country in Africa. And they dictate the pace. They emasculate us, take our resources, and they give us aid. They impoverish us and make us to remain beggars and continue to give us aids. Are you getting what I'm talking? We don't need aids. We don't need aids. We just need to develop our economy. We need independence from imperial governments. Am I talking? So that we can distribute. We want to give wealth to nations. We want to move wealth across the world. Africa is the richest continent on the earth. And that is why you have more war in Africa than any continent in the world. Because this place, imperialists are here to fight. After the scramble for Africa, when they tore us into shreds to take their portions, they brought their political and their economic policies to emasculate us. And they give us dunderheads to rule us. The experts, the educated people are not given opportunity to get close to the place of power. Because when you get there, we become independent by force. So they force you into a minority. Some of you understand the census of Nigeria in the 1950-something before the independence. There's one man had somebody who was used to manipulate the figures to favor the Northern Bloc, has finally opened up. He said, I'm not ready to die with this guilt. If I want to die, let me die and die good death. He said, every day my conscience is fighting me. He said, we were forced to make the minority to become majority. Because we know that the Southerners are so educated. Back in the 50s, we have gotten professors from the South. What is 50? In 18-something, most of the creek areas, like some of the people from Shakiri, were already professors. They had gone abroad, they had read. So the southern part of this country was highly educated. And we were forthright planning. But the entire Northern Bloc was not the same. So they had the vision of forcing the minority, forcing those people on us so that they can use them to keep us perpetually on the begging side. And that's what we are in today. So the crisis of this country is actually caused by imperialism. But the truth is that we have everything it takes. Now, present state of SME in Nigeria. Nigeria operates 17.28 million small and micro enterprises currently, employing 32.41 million people. So 32.41 million people are already employed by 17.28 small and medium enterprises that are in Nigeria. This automatically means that a small and micro enterprise has created 80% of employment in Nigeria, even when it has not been developed. 80% of employment in Nigeria is generated from small and medium enterprises. So current Nigeria economic outlook. In 2013 GDP, Nigeria was 5.2. 2014, Nigeria was 6.3. In 2015, the economy crashed under Buhari. It came down to 4.4. And gradually by 2016, it got back to 6.2. But in July 2017, it fell back again to 5.6. But it's projected that at the end of this 2018, it will get back to 6% projected. Now, the question comes, with all of this before our eyes, what is the solution? I'm signing off. The solution of Nigeria's unemployment crisis, poverty, and every other thing that follows it like disease is the vision of African Economic Empowerment Initiative. Put your hands together. In every generation, if God wants to make a change, he raises a man with an idea. There is no generation, God has never raised a man with an idea. That's why people who came close began to cry. They will steal the idea, they will say, no, they can't steal it. They will only hear it like Pharaoh heard it from Joseph. They can't interpret what they didn't dream. And what is that dream all about? Let us see. This particular vision has what we call mission statement. They have vision statement. And our mission is to raise new generation leaders through entrepreneurship and self-employment creation. And our vision is to clear off the streets employable youths from the scourge of unemployment. Then our goal is to create 500,000 jobs in Nigeria and 2 million in Africa through direct and indirect jobs. Direct and indirect jobs, 2 million in Africa, 500,000 in Nigeria, in the first 3 years through our economic integration programs. Well, we go further. Who are we? We are a global think tank made up of high-profile board of well-respected Nigerian professionals ranging from clergymen, lawyers, engineers, finance practitioners, and investment analysts, and a wide spectrum of membership drawn from both local and international fora. We work with both local and international synergy partners, which include the following. Watch those who we work with. Global Entrepreneurship Institute from USA, Global Priorities Initiative, GPI from South Africa, Small and Medium Entrepreneurship Development Agency of Nigeria, SMEDAN, Institute of Empowerment and Strategy, Abuja, Nigeria, Development Finance Institute, which you know are existing banks that face development of businesses. Then we have Small and Medium Enterprise Equity Investment Scheme, SMEIS. We also have in our synergy business development service providers, those who work on our business plan feasibility studies for people we are raising to access loans for businesses. Now, the 8th, which is not captured here, is NABTED, National Board, am I right? National Business and Technical Education Board, that has finally signed up to give us certification. So our trainings in Nigeria are actually regulated and certificated by NABTED. Okay, how do we do it? How do we intend to transform this nation? How do we empower Nigerians? How do we take you out of the job market and make you an employer? It's not by speaking motivationally. It's not by speaking as rabble rousers. is not by speaking swollen words of men's wisdom. It is by practical approach. What did I say? Practical approach. And these are two. We have what we call business training. We build capacities using Enterprise Development Center called Club 500 Business School for entrepreneurial development. Now, let me tell you one of the reasons why you cannot become an entrepreneur. Get it clear? An entrepreneur is different from an artisan. By the word artisan, we talk about people who just need some skill to actually do work, like all the vulcanizers, carpenters, those tailors, who sew at corridors of houses, people selling orange and selling those things on one table by the roadside. All those things are businesses. They are serious. Some families are raised from those tables you see by the roadside. True or false? But that category is not entrepreneurship. You don't need training for all of that. You just need to know where to buy the orange. We give you the money, you buy the orange, you start a business the next day. But if your dream is to become a Dangote, to become Ifeanyi of Capital Oil, to become who again? You know those names, Dan Tata, Aliko Dan Tata also, whatever. To become the gurus, the man who owns Glow, what's the name again?
Adenuga.
You know the names, Adenuga, who I learned buried the mother with a moving vehicle, with television inside. AC and generator, all were working. They rolled it into grave and sealed it so that the mother will be having a condition, blowing her inside grave. Because the money is too much, she doesn't know what to do with it. Are you getting it? If you want to be those men, you are no more talking about the other part. You need education. What did I call it? That education is not what you learn in the universities. You see all these things we go to do, carry paper, we don't graduate. That's a different matter. When you enter society, it's another thing. Do you understand me? Okay, so in the enterprise development, we now sit you down to teach you with what we call 28 course modules in our toolkit, drawn from Harvard Business School, London School of Economics, and United Nations Toolkit for Nigeria on small and micro enterprises. That is where the entire package was sifted from, and we created something that stands the test of time across the continent of Africa, even beyond Africa. Now that we use to do what? To empower, to teach, to equip. How does this training run? The training to make you an entrepreneur runs for 6 months. It's not a long one. And even running for 6 months does not mean that you are every day inside the school. No. It is splitted into two. A section of it for 3 months. You run what we call boot camp. What did I call it? Boot camp. B-O-O-T-H. In that boot camp, you have 1 week to sit with all our coaches and facilitators. And I want to put it to you that our coaches and facilitators are the best you can think of. Most of the universities you have today don't even have up to 5 PhD holders. Most of the lecturers are master's degrees. I know some universities couldn't produce two PhD holders. It was in the recent accreditation going on. They work with very bright first degree and then masters. But our Enterprise Development Center are 5 PhD holders. That is what we parade in 28 course modules. And these things are simplified. We run it in boot camp system. We give you 1 week consecutive classes for 1 week. Then we release you back. Out of the 3 months, you are left with what? 2 months and 3 weeks. Is it not true? We send you back for internship for 2 months. Because NAPTEP exam is not all about academic exercise, pen on paper. It's 70% practical, 30% pen on paper. So they must be sure there is a skill. It's not about paper, because we are already tired of paper in this country. Britain gave us paper. America does not work with paper. What America asks is, can you do the job? If you can do the job, you have the job. Demonstrate it and let us see. And you do it, who cares about the paper when I'm saying service delivery? There is performance. And then you see those who have this skill, they don't have paper. They say you don't have paper. Those who have the paper are dunderheads. And they tell them because they have paper. Why shouldn't the system collapse? So now Nigeria is trying to correct that error in the education system through NAPTEP. They are asking you for practical things. Even if you graduate with a master's degree, come out and go to NAPTEP, look for skill, and let us certify you. That's where we are. So the thing runs combined. Are we here together? 1 good week boot camp for the first semester. We release you for 2 months to go for internship, or what they call apprenticeship. Because there must be an area you want to acquire skill. That skill is not talking about vulcanizing and all that. We're not talking about real business. Am I talking? Once you sign up in some of these areas, if you already have one, we develop that. If you don't have, we now give you businesses that we have developed. We have a business development department of our NGO. Its work is to develop businesses. Are we getting it now? Now, these businesses that are developed are handed over to our trainees. For those who do not have businesses of their own, if you have business of your own, we accelerate you. We have what we call accelerators, we have incubators. The acceleration section are people who already have business. We accelerate you so that you can do well in that business. Then help you if you need to expand it to package you for loan. Now, in this country, there are over 1 trillion nairas that are statutorily kept for young people like you to do business by federal government. Portion of that money is with Bank of Industry, portion is with Nexim Bank, portion is with Development Bank of Nigeria. Portion also are with some of the handling banks or central bank for that intervention fund. So this money is just everywhere. So portion of it is with Bank of Agriculture. But if you do not know, you will not know. And it will be there. Express will be passing you. And even if you know, I'm using pidgin now. If you even know, am I talking? But you do not know how to access it. It is as good as not knowing at all. So our Enterprise Development Center trains you to have capacity and have business viability, and then assists you to go and get those funds by packaging you for them. Then you have the skill, you have the money, you start the business. But under the watchful eye of our monitoring department, because we must be sure you are doing that business. Obviously, you even have a platform where you constantly flow with us, and that makes it perfect. Because at the end of the day, we have cooperative societies under which circles you can also access funds under cooperative platforms, and you do savings to be able to discipline yourself with your funds. Now, these are strategies that are there under the training for those who want to become entrepreneurs. Then, as they are doing the business and they are escaping,
those who have unfortunately come up well, those who have come up well, we stencil them out for international training mission. So the trade mission anchors you now going beyond the shores of Nigeria
to international platforms. And it was one of those international outings that I brought the recycling plant into Benin from. What that means is you're already doing your business, you are young entrepreneurs, and we are not thinking of how you go beyond that local terrain because you are doing well. We move you to BRICS investment trade missions. There you will see foreigners who have been vowing all the problem they have in life is how do we enter Africa? We want to come to Africa, particularly Nigeria. That's their prayer, but they are looking for right foot soldiers to enter Nigeria. And with a platform like our International Trade Mission, there is no other platform more credible to trust you. At the end of the 4 days investment conference and exhibitions, you start trading ties. And our organization stand in to sign up and close the deals. And there you see a Chinese trying to do something with you in Nigeria. You see a Korean trying to do something with you, a South African trying to do something. There is a platform that makes that possible. It doesn't just happen like that. So it is still possible to displace the Dangotes. It is still possible to displace the Ifan Ubas. It is still possible to displace Inosin Motors. Those things are still the primary level. Because most of these people are not even educated. They will only work under the instruction of consultants. But with enterprise development, scales will fall off from your eyes. You start speaking the language of professionals. You can close deals and hold briefs and do wonders. Take trade missions, speak the language, the corporate language. The corporate world has a language. It's not at they come and they go. It's not buying and selling. There is a language in the corporate world. You can speak in 6 months from the Enterprise Development Center. And when you move into a bank, they know that this is an entrepreneur. You go in every circle, you're an entrepreneur. You know how to go about it. Put your hands together for the Lord. That is one of the ways we do it. And the second way we actually achieve it is by empowerment. We've talked about the training. The empowerment now talks of accessing facilities, which I have already mentioned in passing. And I want to say that apart from packaging you for facilities, the NGO is also coming up with its own fund we call Youth Empowerment Trust Fund. I will talk about it tomorrow more. And we are targeting 500 million in that Youth Empowerment Trust Fund to start also giving loan to our trainees apart from the banks doing that. So that if the road to the top through the banks are getting too slow, then the internal facilities of the NGO will fast track that service. And then business can continue. So these are the two outstanding areas of our operation. Now, under the micro, medium, am I right? Micro, small, and medium enterprises, we're able to split out 2 projects. What did I call them? 2 projects. The NGO has 2 projects. NGOs are known for projects. You don't just come and start ringing your name. Your name can sound from here to America. Nobody cares about the name. They are only interested in the projects your NGO handle. And the projects of our NGO are classified into 2. We have micro empowerment project. That micro empowerment project, we are looking at the vulnerable. We are looking at widows whose husbands are dead and they left all the burden of raising the children on their hands. We are looking at some women, their husbands are alive, but the economic burden rests on such women. They suffer a lot. In this country, over 80% of families is women that run those families. Except you do not understand the statistics of this country. Women carry economic burden of 80% of Nigerian homes. And if such women are well-to-do, that's a different thing. But there are some who are not well-to-do. And this burden is still killing them. They are struggling to make children go to school. And then there is something they lay hands on. Our NGO is interested in helping to support that thing. Then there are youths also. They may be orphans. They are suffering, things are not working, and then they are ready to do business. We can help them with one micro thing. Under that micro empowerment project, we have a nomenclature called Operation Rescue Mission. So under that cover, we give grants, we don't give loans. We empower them after training to go and do something that small money can start. And with good capacity building through the National Directorate of Employment or EDR Renaissance, we have some of these collaborations we have reached for training facility or Youth Council of Nigeria. These are places you have facilities for skill acquisition. We can do all of that with them and then give them micro grants free of charge. And by tomorrow, I think the first generation of these recipients will be receiving grants in this place, about 10 of them, to kickstart it. But we are trusting God for a vision of 10,000 of people in that category every year. And I know that God will do it. Then, Outside that micro, we now have the SME level, which is now small and medium enterprise level. We now have a project there nomenclature, youth empowerment scheme. That's where the entrepreneurs fall in. The Dangotes in the making fall in. After the training, we give them opportunity to have loans. Their loans are not grants because they are not vulnerable. Are you getting it? They have their loans to invest in businesses. Now, opportunity for them to have grants is still possible. But these grants will come from the platforms where grants come from. Like tomorrow, the Minister of Finance is going to be here. And I still remember that one of the key persons there in that trip is the person heading the UWIN grant of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. UWIN is a grant where they give 10 million each to young graduates who are ready to do business. Once there is a certification that training has been done, like we have in the Enterprise Development Center, you are trained and NAPTEB has given you a certificate. You already qualify. In case they now say, please, we want to give grant to 100 of your people. What they give is not loan. They give you and it is given. And that's 10 million. Now, the biggest bump is that the director in charge of UWIN will be here tomorrow. Can you put your hands together? So we've been talking. I have not seen him face to face. I don't know him one-on-one. It is grace at work. The whole thing was minuted to his table. Bam! So he's been the one anchoring for the minister on the entire package. So the minister, as of 2 weeks ago, was in New York for IMF conference. So the thing was pushed to his table to be arranging before the woman's arrival. He kept calling me to ask about their keynote address and some things they need to put together. Now, when he disclosed his background, I almost fainted. I said, so you mean the man heading this grant will be here? By fire and by force, we must win their heart tomorrow. So by the grace of God, that's where we are. And I just want you to understand that we have not even told you anything yet as regards what we do. But you have seen from the presentations done so far that poverty is worldwide. Unemployment is worldwide. You don't have to run away from Nigeria because you are looking for one paid salary job somewhere. You need to take advantage of the platform in this country. From the economic analysis, you discover that Nigeria is investors' destination. Now, as we speak now, they are still migrating from all parts of the world into Nigeria. They now entered into discussion. At the end of the day, they added up, did their risk analysis. They said, Aga, if light in Nigeria let it be like candle. Even if it doesn't come up at all, we'll run gen all to Nigeria is the destination. He said you can't joke with 200 million people. These are clients to go and set up a factory because there is electricity. You go and put it in Ghana with 17 million people, the population of just Lagos State. They say, no, we are going there. Let's go there. We'll run generator 24 hours. This is investors' destination. And God has given us everything, and we lack nothing. Put your hands together for me. Before the anchorman maybe comes around to talk to us, before we usher in the next speaker, I just want you to know that you didn't make mistake for coming here today. Just give us audience. I saw some persons visiting you as if their stomachs are purging them. When you are in a place where information is available, pick as much as you can get, because these things don't come easy. Let me tell you one thing that will surprise you. NIAC, which is Nigeria Investment and Economic Conference, is not free. This conference is 15,000 for a participant. But we made it free this year. I pray that it will be free next year. So, you should value what you are getting and sit down and appreciate God for the opportunity. Because the world is driven and controlled by information. After me comes another electrifying session with Dr. Levi Rousseau. But he's not coming now until he is anchored. Put your hands together for him.
Thank you very much. That is the president of the organization. Another round of applause for him on the well speech. I'm not going to waste much time. Before we call in the next facilitator, we want to know if we have 1 or 2 questions. I'm just going to give rooms for just 2 questions on this. And while we are doing that, if you have any question, you just signify by raising up your hand. But while you're doing that, I just want to also quickly give 1 or 2 summary about his discussion on this. The NGO is saddled with the responsibility of creating employment for youths, teaming youth in the society. And we'll do that through entrepreneurship. We'll train youth capacity. At the end of it all, we'll drive it with empowerment by way of grants and also by way of soft loans we will give to our trainees. So on this note, I don't know if we have 1 or 2 questions. Okay? Okay, you could. One? Okay, can you please just put it down? I think after the end of the second class, we're going to take all of them together.
All questions will come together. Just keep writing down.
Okay, thank you.